Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're continuing our series in the brand new Player's Handbook, talking about the classes that we find on character creation. It turns out that while it is very thematic to discuss your species, your background, and all of the things that are necessary when you design your character from the ground up, your class is the thing that often is most important. It is what leveling up defines for you as you take your steps through the campaign. It is where your combat abilities, your spell casting, your social interaction, all the pillars of play are propped up by this singular choice. And in fact, it may not be a singular choice because multi-classing exists, but it is how you design the grand picture of what your character is and can do. Today we're talking about one of my favorite classes in the game, the Cleric. Yes, as many of you who've played Baldur's Gate 3 would note, the Cleric is indeed one of the most useful party members, R.I.P. Shadowheart. They have a lot of support powers, a lot of offensive powers. They are one of the most versatile classes out there because it turns out that they can do most things. They're not the best at most things. They're the best at one or two things, but they certainly cast a wide net. Mechanically, though, we have a lot to discuss when it comes to the Cleric. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. But before we do, I'd like to let you know, Relaxed Fantasy Review has memberships. For just $1 a month, you can support me here on YouTube and get a couple benefits. First, you get a little badge next to your name in the comments, letting folks know that you're a supporter, but also you get early access to my videos. I upload videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I upload them a day early for members only. If that interests you, you can click the join button. It's just down there next to the subscribe button. I'd love to see you in the comments with your member badges. And if it doesn't interest you, that's totally fine too. Just being here and watching the video, liking, subscribing, clicking the notifications bell, those are things that I'm supposed to say, right? That really supports me. It helps me in the algorithm. It helps you see more of my content as it comes out. It's genuinely what I would love for you to do. If you can't subscribe to the channel, if you can't become a member, that's fine. I really appreciate you being here and supporting me here on YouTube. So clerics, let's talk about them. Level 1, when you build your cleric, what do you got? We'll start off with their hit dice. They have a D8 hit die. They are certainly not the tankiest characters. They share hit dice with things like bards and rogues. Third of the list, as far as the 4 hit dice can go. At level 1, a cleric with a 14 constitution will have 10 hit points, and then you roll your d8, add your con modifier, and level up with your hit points that way. It's not amazing, but it's not the worst in the game. I give it an 8 out of 10. Their saving throw proficiencies. They have proficiency in wisdom and charisma saves. Now, wisdoms are one of the most common saving throws in the game. Most mental resilience when it comes to the common spells and the common effects call for wisdom saves. I think they're the most common in the game. Charisma saves are a little more niche. They specifically refer to things like charm, a little bit of extraplanar power, banishing uses charisma, things like that. Doesn't come up as often as wisdom, not nearly, but it's still useful to have. I give them 10 out of 10 and 8 out of 10 respectively. Clerics have one of the shortest skill lists in the game. They have 5 skills that they can choose from, medicine, religion, that sort of thing, and they can choose 2 of those. So if you're trying to build a skill-based character, Cleric is not the place to go. I say that this is 6 out of 10. I believe it's the lowest in the game. Even Barbarians have more options than Clerics, ironically. And they only get to use simple weapons. So there are, this will be taken care of in a moment, but the baseline Cleric just has simple weapons. So clubs, great clubs, crossbows, short bows, daggers, that sort of thing. The simple basic stuff. No martial weapons, unfortunately, so 7 out of 10 there. Armor, though, they are not strapped. They've got light armor, medium armor, and shield proficiencies. So it's pretty common to see a cleric with breastplate with a shield standing on the front line with a decent AC. Clerics have this weird dichotomy where they want to be frontliners because they've got a pretty good armor class and effects that want them to be able to touch their enemies or their allies. The only thing that really stops them is their hit points. And the base cleric doesn't have heavy armor. Again, we'll get to that in a sec. But still, everything except heavy, that's solid on its own. Throw on some half plate once you get it, and your AC will be fine. I say this is 9 out of 10. And of course, being a full caster, one of the 6 in the game, the cleric has the spell casting traits. They are wisdom based casters, the second most common, the middle one. And wisdom is debatably the best skill to invest in. I argue that charisma is a little better because social interaction's a whole pillar on its own, but I certainly would take wisdom over intelligence because it defines things like insight and perception and survival and other things like that. And if it's powering your magic as well, so much the better, and it powers your wisdom saves, which you want to be high. The other thing about clerics is that while they are full spellcasters, they can prepare their spells when they rest. Many spellcasters have to choose their spells only when they level up, but not a cleric. Clerics actually get to, every single time they long rest, choose from the entire cleric spell list what they want to know. This allows them to prepare for the day. They are one of the best planners in the game for buffing, for support, for damage, for utility. Their spell list is also quite varied. They've got a lot of damaging magic, considering that they are thought of as primary healers. They also have the most healing magic in the entire game, a lot of support, and a decent amount of battlefield control too. You really can't go wrong with the cleric spell list. Are they the best blasters? No. Are they the best controllers? No. That would arguably be the wizard. But in general, they do just fine. I give their spellcasting trait 10 out of 10, not just because they've got all the options available to them, but also because they can switch them out whenever they need to, just by taking a rest. Now, the other thing you get at level 1 is the Divine Order trait. This trait gives you a pair of options based on what kind of cleric you want to be, the Protector or the Thaumaturge. The Protector mediates that armor and weapons problem we had earlier, giving you proficiency in heavy armor and martial weapons. 9 out of 10 times, this is what I'm choosing for my cleric, because even if you want to lean into your magic rather than your combat skill, being proficient in heavy armor is a big deal. Putting on plate mail is a massive buff. It lets you dump your dexterity almost entirely, allowing you to just lean into just wearing a thick skin of armor with your shield included. You can stand on the front lines much easier now. And if you stand on the back lines, you're just harder to hit. Thaumaturge is the more niche pick. It's not bad. You get an extra cleric cantrip, which is nice. The cleric cantrip list is decent. And you get to add your wisdom modifier to your arcana and religion checks, which are intelligence-based checks. It always seemed weird to me that a cleric would have to invest in their intelligence stats in order to know about their religion. That was odd. This has rectified that by saying that you can add your wisdom, but you have to take Thaumaturge. So if you want to be a studied cleric, now you have to give up heavy armor. I can see it. I understand what they're going for here. So, like I said, most of the time I'm going to let the skills be, just have a 10 in my intelligence and just accept it. And grab the heavy armor for sure. But if you really want to build that kind of scribe style cleric, the Thaumaturge is a good pick. Either way, the Divine Order is 10 out of 10 because most of the time you're taking the armor and the weapons, which rounds you out in those ways. And if you take Thaumaturge, it's not the worst pick in the game. It just, you have to play into that specifics. But 10 out of 10 for the choice. All right, let's move on to level 2. And at level 2, we are granted Channel Divinity. This is the natural energy that the clerics have that power their abilities other than spells. Channel Divinity is one of those things that used to be very specific to the subclass. You'd have to use Channel Divinity to power whatever it is your cleric subclass can do. There is a standard thing, though, Turn Undead. You present your holy symbol to the undead, use a Channel Divinity, they make a saving throw. If they fail, they are frightened of you and incapacitated. So they cannot approach you. They have disadvantage on their attacks and ability checks. They cannot take actions or reactions. All they can really do is run from you. And because they're incapacitated, that's different than 2014. Now they don't dash. They just move away from you. And that's good. That's good if you're fighting undead. Now they actually have a very handy little power that you can use called Divine Spark. If you're not fighting undead and you don't want to use your subclass's ability, Divine Spark just gives you something to do with your channel divinity. Choose an enemy or an ally. They take 1d8 damage or healing, depending on what you want to do with it. It's not super strong, it's basically a Cure Wounds or a Sacred Flame, but you get it from your channel divinity instead of a cantrip or a first level spell. And if you haven't spent your channel divinity and you're taking like a short rest or something, this is something you can pump some healing into it. Or if you have to use it in a fight and you're out of spells and for some reason you don't want to use your cantrip, this will work. It does scale, I will add. It does go up, similar to cantrips as they do. So yeah, I think the Channel Divinity overall, if you ignore the subclasses, which we are doing, we're just talking about the base class, is 8 out of 10. Turn Undead is handy when it's handy, and it's not handy otherwise. And Divine Spark is nice. It's a decent way to use your feature that doesn't shoehorn itself into specific adventures. So 8 out of 10 for Channel Divinity, mostly because of Divine Spark. And we're going to skip ahead because at level 3, you get your subclass. We're not talking about those. Level 4 and onwards, you get your feats, and we're not going to discuss those because everyone gets those. Instead, we're going to talk about Seer Undead. Seer Undead adds to your Turn Undead. When you use your Channel Divinity to turn undead, now creatures that fail their save against Turn Undead actually take damage. The damage does scale as well as you level up. And it used to be that it would just instantly destroy undead of a certain CR and it wouldn't affect others. Now it just hurts them. And it hurts them equal to your wisdom modifier of D8. So if you pump your wisdom and you're fighting a lot of low-level undead, you can just evaporate them. And even against the more powerful undead, you're going to hurt them. So there is some benefit to this. I think it takes a feature that is okay and makes it still okay. I give Seer Undead another 8 out of 10. Then at level 7, you get another choice, Blessed Strikes. You can choose whether you want to focus on your weapons or your spells. If you choose Blessed Strikes with your weapons, then you get to deal an extra d8 of radiant or necrotic damage once per turn when you hit with a weapon. That's nice. It's just basically like having the special Divine Smite the Paladins get, except you get a little earlier. You can't pour your spell slots into it. It's just kind of automatic damage that's added to your attack. Or you can take the potent spellcasting variety of this, and you get to add your wisdom modifier to your cantrips. Cleric cantrips consist of Word of Radiance, Sacred Flame, and Toll the Dead. Not bad at all. I'm not trying to, downsize Toll the Dead. But, if you hit with them, they do the dice, and there's no modifier. Now you can add your modifier. That's a few more points of damage every time you use a cantrip. I think that Blessed Strikes is still a good feature. Like, I like the fact that they're powering you up, allowing you to scale just a little bit better. It's still not something that's going to make or break your cleric. It's just nice to have. I say 8 out of 10 again. But then you get into the second half of the cleric. Level 10, Divine Intervention. Divine Intervention has gone through quite a revamp. Instead of being just a percentile roll, now it is simply once per day, you can, as a magic action, call upon your deity and ask them to cast a spell, a cleric spell of 5th level or lower. You don't have to have it prepared. You don't have to have it in any way. You just ask for it, and your deity gives it to you. And it happens as an action. The exception is it can't be a reaction spell, so you have to use an action spell or a bonus action spell, or, as many people have been eager to point out, the Hallow spell, which normally takes 24 hours to cast and creates like an area that is very, very deadly to, extraplanar beings, and you can, weaken them and stuff like that. And now you can cast it with an action using Divine Intervention. I don't think that this is wrong. Like there's so many 5th level spells that wizards can use to just end encounters. Wall of Force and Synaptic Static are some of the really, really powerful ones. Now you get to just cast Hallow as an action once per day. I don't think that breaks the game. I think it makes you incredibly strong. A level 10 cleric is going to be, quite handy to have. And yeah, and of course there's many other spells. An emergency Raise Dead or Revivify will work. An emergency Greater Restoration if you didn't pack it. It's the kind of thing that you're going to use probably every day if you're thinking strategically. And if you aren't using it, then by the end of the day, you can just, cast a utility spell, divination perhaps, and just find out some information for yourself. Like, there's always a use for this. And I think it's worth 10 out of 10. I genuinely think it's that good. At level 14, you get improved Divine Strikes. I have a bit of a bone to pick with this one, because it powers up the choice you made at level 7. It doesn't allow you to change it. So if you chose the weapon version of this, your 1d8 increases to 2d8, which is, again, decent scaling if you're going to lean into martial weapons and, you take Polearm Master or something. Like, it does strengthen you up quite a bit. And if you took the spellcasting variety, potent spellcasting, when you deal damage to a creature with a cantrip, you can choose another creature, yourself or an ally, and grant them temporary hit points equal to twice your wisdom modifier, which is actually really good. I mean, it's not a lot of temporary hit points. It's 10 at the most. But you get to do this every turn while you're also casting your cantrips and dealing damage. So if you're using your spells, you're also buffing your allies, and it's free. Like, you do not have to be doing this with a spell slot or with Channel Divinity or anything. I think it's fantastic. The only thing that bothers me is that what I would have liked is to have, like, the Blessed Strikes from level 7 doing the extra damage with my weapons, and then this temp HP thing at level 14, but I can't. You have to choose one or the other. And so if you're looking long term, or if you're just a spellcaster in general, then I'd take potent spellcasting at level 7. If you want to lean into your weapons, that's fine. It's still a good choice. And at level 14, it does buff, which is great. But it's a shame you'd miss out on all that temp HP. So, I'm still giving Improved Divine Strikes 10 out of 10. I think that both of them are solid. I just wish that I could pick, one or the other. But it just locks into what you did at level 7. So, whatever. Still 10 out of 10 for sure. Finally, at level 20, your Divine Intervention becomes Greater Divine Intervention. And now, when you use Divine Intervention to appeal to your god for something, your deity speaks and says, you may cast the Wish spell. The Wish spell being the most powerful spell in D&D. It's literally written in its description, allowing you to copy any spell of 8th level or lower, or to wish for something bigger than that. Of course, most casters, when they use the Wish spell, run the risk of losing it, but not clerics, because when you cast it using Greater Divine Intervention, you don't suffer the negative effects and potentially lose the ability to cast a spell ever again. It's the deity that's doing it for you. When you cast it, when you used Greater Divine Intervention this way, you cannot use it again for 2d4 days, so on average 5 days between wishes. But yeah, you get to use wishes basically with impunity. I would argue that the DM should put some level of restriction in that. Like, the wish spell does have the ability to just fail if the DM deems it too strong. But you're just one of the greatest champions of your god, and they decided to grant you this power every so often. I think that's solid. I think it's one of the best things clerics can get. It is a very worthy capstone. I call it 10 out of 10. I think that it is really, really good if you've made it to this part in the game. Don't leave Wish to the sorcerers and the wizards. Let the clerics have it too. I think it's a very, very cool thing. Overall, the cleric has it all. They've got the armor. They've got the weapons, if you choose to build them for that. They've got the spell casting. They've got all the divine powers. They've got the scaling. They've got, we're not going to talk subclasses today, but they've got quite a few good ones. I guess the only thing they can't do is use their skill proficiencies very well. They're not a skill build. But considering that, you can go Thaumaturge and boost more skills, and then the subclasses also provide you with fun utility, I'd say clerics are arguably one of the best classes in the game. They are not going to be perfect at everything, but they are not just healers and they are not just support characters. They can do it all. And throwing a cleric into any party, regardless of its composition, is powerful. If they're going to join up with the fighters and the barbarians, then they become the back line, throwing out their spells and supporting their allies. But they can also join up with the wizards and the sorcerers and become the tank, throwing on heavy armor and buffing themselves up with temp HP and buff spells like Bless and Aid, and just making life easier for the squishies in the back. The cleric is the perfect middle line, and I think that it is always good to add one to your party. I give them 9 out of 10, not because they're perfect or because they're not perfect, but they're very, very good. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below. Have a look for the join button down there, and keep your eyes peeled for more class reviews coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.